All right. Well, once again, my name is Kevin Garcia. Welcome to the New Voices in Gaming panel. We are first going to be talking about Mela Lee. You know her from Apex Legends as Lifeline. She is also Tiki from Fire Emblem, probably one of the most prominent characters in that ongoing series. And right now, we'd really like to celebrate 50 million users right now on Lifeline. Sorry, on Apex. Mela Lee, welcome. I just want to say hi to you real quick.
Hi.
We met real briefly backstage right now, but where are you from originally?
I was born in America. My mom's English, and my father is from Mississippi.
Excellent. Right now, we're going to bring out our next guest, but I just wanted to say real quick, thank you for helping 50 million users happen.
It was my pleasure. Got a care package coming for ya.
Next, we're going to be bringing out Elizabeth Maxwell. She recently released Just Cause 4, but she is also really well known for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And she, many other games we can talk about in a bit. She's also really big with Rooster Teeth, as are you, aren't you? Yeah. All right.
Trailer.
Okay, we're going to arrange that for next time. Ramping.
Or a motorcycle.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to be bringing out Victoria Atkin. She is best known right now for Crackdown 3. She's also in a game that some of you may have played called Fortnite. And she is going to be spotlighted in Assassin's Creed, the new DLC coming out, actually just came out. Thank you. Now, before we get started proper, I have a quick question. Zelda was a really, really big hit, naturally. Fortnite kind of came out of nowhere. Is Apex Legends stealing some of Fortnite's thunder right now?
Is that what? So I can hear.
Is Apex Legends stealing some of Fortnite's thunder right now?
I think we're all part of the same light storm. I think worldwide Battle Royale is picking up. People are wanting to play on, multiplayer games, and I'm going to not throw shade and throw love to all of these gaming community.
I mean, one could argue maybe would Apex Legends have done as well as it did without Fortnite?
It's true.
Who knows?
Before we get started, we're going to show one more quick video of Lifeline. Well, the reason I want to talk about Lifeline is with Lifeline becoming such a big cultural hit so quickly, Urbosa being such a major, major part of Breath of the Wild, and Mela Lee in her way as well as part of Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm seeing an increase of, women of color becoming major parts of the gaming industry. And I wanted to ask you about that specifically, and we were talking a little bit about this backstage. Could you tell me about your personal connection with Lifeline?
Well, I'm very lucky that Lifeline actually looks almost exactly like my Nana. She is pretty pleased that a diverse brown-skinned beauty that's kick-ass is being braced around the world. She's pretty sure everyone's cosplaying as her, which is nice. I come from a multicultural background, and while my family on both sides have been supportive of all of the roles that I've played from every culture and nation, it's really an honor for me to get to represent another part of my culture that I'm very proud of. And I love that people around the world have really seen themselves in this character, and it's an honor to play Lifeline.
And Elizabeth, same thing for Urbosa. You were mentioning something background, a little bit of a personal background as well with the connection with this character.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things about Urbosa specifically is that I always loved that she kind of represents an alternative view of like beauty and femininity. She's not the super, thin-waisted, big-breasted, kind of traditional anime style heroine. She's got a six-pack, and she can kick anybody's ass, male or female. And she has kind of an unusual, more, shall I say, ethnic face or ethnic features as opposed to what is traditionally considered more Caucasian. And I believe from my research that the Gerudo were kind of inspired by Middle Eastern culture, which I thought was really cool because I'm also Lebanese. So I didn't really realize that when I got the role, but after I did a little bit more research, I, again, thought it was kind of cool to actually get to play a character that showcases my background a little bit.
And there's been a lot of talk over the years of video gaming kind of marginalizing or maybe minimalizing the roles of women, or like you were saying, giving very stereotypical views of what the woman should look like. Victoria, what do you think about some of the roles that you've been taking on? You have a wide range with the short amount of time you've been in gaming right now.
Yeah, I was launched into gaming playing Evie Fry in Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which I guess some of you have played. So after, I mean, I still do a lot of TV and film, but that was the full performance capture for that character. And it was the first playable female on the next generation consoles for Assassin's Creed franchise, which, as most of you know, is a very heavily male franchise. So in order to bring a female assassin, it was a huge risk for Ubisoft, and I think it really paid off. But the great thing about Evie is that she's extremely intelligent. She is clothed. And she's very wise. She has a romantic arc with Henry Green, another Indian assassin. And she's twins with a brother, Jacob. And they get to... I think having the brother-sister relationship really helped to introduce a female character so that they could have this kind of twin strength. So I'm really proud of the work that we did with Evie. And I think that was a huge leap in the Assassin's Creed franchise, which is such a huge franchise. And since then, I've worked nicely on Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a beautiful franchise for women and men. I mean, and I think there's a lot of, every gender enjoys Horizon Zero Dawn, but it has some characters. I play two characters, Mela Lee and Sakuli, in Horizon Zero Dawn. Sakuli's great. She lives in very independent cave painter that lives in the hills and drinks paint and is crazy, she's great. And definitely not whatever a stereotypical woman is, but she's not that, anything of that. And then Mei-Lin is a warrior and, obviously has the strength for that. So it's really great. And Ashley Birch, who plays Aloy, I absolutely adore. And they've done such a good job in Guerrilla Games. But also Fortnite, I'm playing 3 characters in Fortnite that are cool women that have all different looks. So yeah, I'm very, very proud to be a part of time now that's women in video games is celebrated.
Well, let me ask about that.
Yeah, definitely would.
Woo! Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Elizabeth, Mela, what do you think about women in gaming? Is there a change? I know the stereotype before was the princess needing rescued, and then it evolved a bit with Lara Croft and those kind of games in the 90s, but it seems very, very different now. Where do you feel women in gaming are going in terms of characters, in terms of what the players see most often?
I'm really excited in 2000s going forward that, we talk about diversity and females in film, but I feel like the interactive gaming world has thrust women into the roles of partner, a warrior, not just a princess. And as a woman, it's been empowering to see and imagine myself in these roles. And I think it's only going to be better. I think the gaming industry gets kind of maligned sometimes about women, but as a woman who's playing in games, like the last few years, these roles that they're writing for us are inspiring AF.
And also all the non-binary characters, LGBTQ characters, it's really cool. Like there's so many, everybody is represented, I feel, now in this medium.
And to me, it makes me proud of our community as well, because the developers do have to take that risk and go there, but they do it partially with the support, and the enthusiasm of the gaming community. So I think it's also representative and indicative of, the growth of the gamers out there as well.
And actually, that's something I hadn't thought about, but gaming has been much quicker to embrace LGBT characters than, say, the big budget movies. I mean, you see them on TV, but you don't see it a lot in the big budget superhero movies. What do you think that says about gaming? Do you think that one affects the other in terms of how it evolves?
That's a great question. I think we're still in a big process of evolution on all sides. I think the great thing about video gaming is there is a younger generation, primarily. I mean, there's a lot of different generations that play games. I wouldn't want to stereotype and just say young people play games, but I think that generation and the evolution of the generations that are coming up are embracing different things. So I think it's maybe an easier move to introduce, I don't even want to say new ideas because that's not correct, but maybe to take risks on showing different. I feel like I'm messing this question up, but hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying.
Well, going back to the gaming side of things a second, all of you have played games with a very narrative focus. It allows you to play some really interesting characters, but you've also performed in games where it's more online focused, more like the battle royales and those kinds of things. Is it harder as an actor to do those roles where you're just doing little snippets rather than a full scene? Would you prefer to do roles that have, a more depth to it in terms of like long cutscenes, or would you prefer to be part of the context-sensitive dialogue that comes out in a multiplayer? Elizabeth, let's start with you. What do you think?
Gosh, I mean, I would honestly say that they're both challenging in their own ways. I feel like the depth and the attention to story that a lot of AAA video games are giving their narrative and their cutscenes rivals feature films that I've worked on in terms of the script and the rehearsal process and the character development. So that is challenging and fulfilling in its own way as an actor. But sometimes I find almost the kind of like online, slightly out of context characters to be even more difficult because like I said, you're working with a lot of stuff out of context and having to make a really big impact and a really big character statement in a short amount of time and with less dialogue. I haven't worked on any online games nearly as popular as like Apex Legends or Fortnite, but I do a lot of, if anybody's played like Smite or Paladins, I do a lot of characters in there. And that can almost be harder in a way because you have to give the developer every possible sound that could come out of the character's mouth without context. So you have to do these grab bags of sounds where you're like, okay, let's get some grunts. We need some angry grunts. We need some bored grunts. We need some dismissive grunts. And you've got to make them character specific.
I'm visualizing a dismissive grunt. There you go. Mela?
Well, I think all of the jobs are awesome, but I think
All of
they
the
appeal to
paychecks
different. Yeah, they appeal to different parts of you. Like I've been in roles just like with Elizabeth, where you're an 8-year-old. It's a director's medium. They're describing a world to you because everything's NDA. So oftentimes you don't even get artwork, and it's just this playground. And you get to die and be badass and cry and weep and make noises that you have to tap into your 7 or 8-year-old self that's like, whatevs. And then the story, there's a few games recently that have come out, and the stories are hundreds of pages. So it's 3 or 4 movies worth of story because it's alternate universes, alternate endings. And you guys remember those books that you flip here and now they do it online, but you have these different, I'm a maths person, so you have different coefficients and you put it in and you have an alternate reality or finish and completion. And so the nerd in me is just fascinated by the different storylines and getting to explore the dark and light of yourself as a character. So I'm really fascinated by that process. But as a voice actress, I think we won the lottery, and it's an extraordinary job to get to go to every day.
Those NDAs, those non-disclosure agreements, those have even affected you behind the scenes, where you'll be doing a voice and not know what the character looks like sometimes?
I didn't know what Lifeline looked like. And I don't know if I didn't see any of the concept art until the day they released. So there was a kind of an idea. They had little sketches, but the full concept art, we were, as actors, just as interested in the release of Apex Legends as you guys were. We were just combing through it and hearing the lines put together. And when you're doing the action lines, they're trying to describe it to you without letting you know where you are. So you just have to trust the director. And they're like, this is sort of urgent. And to see it all put together is pretty, again, it's my 8-year-old self going, oh my gosh, this is so cool. You're trying to be cool about it. Like, yeah, I'm Lifeline, but I'm still like, oh my gosh, that's me. Or it's the total geek moment.
It's really not uncommon at all to audition for, do callbacks for, and get cast in a video game without having any concept of what the game is or who the character actually is.
Yep.
Because the NDAs are so intense.
I'm about to start a game next week. I have no idea what it is. Like a huge game. I'm booked for like 5 months. I have no idea what I'm doing.
So do they give you at least a hint of like, well, they're going to have maybe this kind of an accent or this kind of an attitude, or is it just more of like, you've read for these 3 different roles, one of them will definitely be you?
For me, I generally play the token Brit, so I know what they want me for.
Yeah, usually, I mean, they will give you a character description. It's generally not the description of the actual character, but similar in some sort of respect. They'll get, similar qualities. And usually, if you're doing an accent, they do give you that ahead of time.
Usually, although Thora in Fortnite Save the World is a Nordic accent, and I had until I turned up. Oh, so let's get going with this accent. I said, what? Yeah. So I had 2 minutes to listen to that and go.
I do feel like it's a common misconception with developers and directors that if you can do one accent, you can do them all. And I've showed up and had them be like, "Oh, you can do Scandinavian, right?" And I'm like,
Yeah, I did a Scandinavian the other week. I wouldn't be able to repeat it.
And they do give you an idea, like for Lifeline, like they knew, like I have my Nana is Creole, West Indies, Welsh, Ethiopian. So you could tell in the writing they had sound spelled out her lines. So I kind of had an indication. But I have another game coming out in about a month. And it turned out to be a major, major character. But the initial lines were Guard A. And so I was just myself. And the character basically just has a lower version of my voice like this. And then when I showed up and found out who it was, I was like, I need to wear Depends or like little pee pads. Because I was just like, and I think they do it too so that you're not so nervous when you're auditioning. Like you can just be yourself and they want that authenticity.
For Assassin's Creed, I'd got through like 4 rounds and I had no idea what it was for. And then...
You didn't know it was Assassin's Creed yet?
No. And they'd flown me to Quebec. I'd done like 2 auditions on tape. First of all, it was for... They gave me Eliza Doolittle scripts and told me to be badass. I was like, oh, okay. So I did that, and then they said, oh, it was in a Yorkshire accent, so very much like Game of Thrones. They wanted her to be like Ygritte, so I had a Yorkshire accent talking like that. And then they said, oh, we wondered if she could do a London accent. And my manager said, oh, we'll see, we'll see, which is my own accent. And so we played with that for a couple of weeks and said, well, she's working on it. And then sent that over. And then Quebec flew me over and met the producers. And then it was only after I'd done a director session, we had lunch. And they said, oh, this is for Assassin's Creed. Which, unfortunately, I didn't even know what that was. So I was like, oh, I'm mad. Like, they were so excited that I just, oh, yeah. And I walked out of the building like, oh, whoa. Like, this is huge. So, yeah, it's highly unlikely that you never know what you're going to do till you're there.
Actually, on that note, Elizabeth, Zelda was, is one of the biggest franchises, and it was not known for its voice acting. Did you know from the beginning that you were applying for Zelda, or something that you found out later in the process?
I did not find out that it was Zelda until I had signed a contract that did not include the words Zelda or Urbosa in it. Flew to LA, stepped into the recording booth, was given a script and said, okay, we're going to need a couple minutes to get ready. Why don't you go ahead and start looking over your lines? And I was like, cool. Hyrule. And I needed a minute.
Right?
It was like, I think that on some level they do it so that you don't get nervous and psych yourself out ahead of times. But it was a little embarrassing to have like a mini meltdown in front of like Nintendo executives, I'm not going to lie.
Well, and it's, I think some people think it's nothing for us, or like we're so cool. Like there's an impression, and maybe there isn't. You've already met me, so you know I'm not cool. But like you think we're all cool all the time. But I was just at Respawn, who did Apex Legends, and I dropped off some cookies. And as I was leaving, Vince Zampella, the CEO, walked up, and I was trying to be really cool because I was live streaming. And I almost started to cry like a kid. I was like, So I think if I'd known everything about the role and who was doing it, you're right. I would have been a little bit geeky and not really focused on the acting part.
Is there a franchise or maybe a genre that you would definitely love to play in? Victoria, you want to start with you?
I'm really excited. In June, I'm in a game that I actually know and that I actually played as a kid that's coming out. That I'm very, very excited about that. That was cool.
Game to be announced later, I assume.
Yeah, I can't announce that yet, but I'm very excited to be part of that game. I mean, I would like to play a lead in Call of Duty, a female lead. I think that would be cool for me, and I love the Tomb Raider franchise. If they recast Lara Croft, I would be very happy to play that.
Lara Croft is British. Could you play that?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to work on the accent for a minute.
Give her some time.
Yeah. Pretty sure, and I think a British girl plays it right now. I was like, it's an American. Now I'm questioning. It's an American.
Anything performance capture related is, yeah, I mean, it's like the ultimate playground. It's so exhilarating. I hope that I one day get to be in a Final Fantasy, because I grew up playing those games, so that has like a personal thing to my heart. And gosh, what else? They're remaking or prettying up a lot of older games and adding in voiceover where there didn't used to be. I'm not saying that I necessarily want them to do this for Chrono Trigger, because I think it's beautiful and perfect as it is. But if they do it, I want to be Luca. So, Square Enix, if you're watching this.
I mean, I don't know if certain franchises will come back. This year, I'm really into the narrative. God of War, Become Human, Red Dead Redemption, like you're just still getting lost in that. I would like to continue doing Apex Legends. It's one of my favorites. My husband, who is a big gamer, so I get to vicariously, well, it's because they're single-player games, and he's bigger than I am, so he gets to control. But God of War, Red Dead Redemption, I love the narration, and I'd love any opportunity on any level to work with the houses that create that.
On the note of franchises, Mela and Elizabeth, you guys both work with Rooster Teeth a lot. How did that get started, and what's that like? I know I have a lot of my friends are fans of Rooster Teeth, and they just get into the whole, everything that is Rooster Teeth. How did that start?
My sister just had a beautiful nephew for me. She's doing all the hard work. And I happened to be in town and went ahead and met with the Rooster Teeth people, and they were creating this character for Ruby named Caroline Cordovan. And so I read for her, and we kind of worked on that and were able to record it. And Lindsay, who I'm a fan of, found out she's a fan of one of the shows I do called Miraculous Ladybug. So we were just geeking out over each other. I'm sorry, it's like I feel like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, where you get the golden ticket. Our jobs are amazing and fun, and these kind of opportune moments. So now I'm coming back and forth to Austin more often.
I got lucky enough that a bunch of the guys at Rooster Teeth, like Carrie and Gray, were big fans of Attack on Titan. And then they found out that I lived in Austin, and so they invited me to come have a tour of the studio. And they, it was kind of a similar thing. They said, we're actually getting ready to audition a character that we think that you'd be really great for. Do you want to read for us? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Having no clue what Ruby was. I'd never seen it before. And I actually went home and I was like, okay, I should probably watch a couple episodes just so I have some context of, what I'm auditioning for. And I ended up binge watching the first 2 seasons, like right there. And Rooster Teeth is really kind of cool in the sense that it's like a big family. And, if you work with them once and they love you and you love them, you tend to work with them more. So that's how I got involved with Camp and Red vs. Blue and stuff.
Is there a big tonal shift as an actor going between something like Attack on Titan and then Camp, where you're one of the goofy leads?
Yes.
Is that hard?
I don't walk out of the booth crying. It's not hard. It's just... it's really nice to have the variation because so much of what I do, especially for anime, is very dramatic, and you do kind of tend to internalize that a bit as an actor. It's hard not to. And Camp is like my palate cleanser. It's my happy pill. So.
I hear people say that there's a stereotype that voice acting is easier than other types of acting, but then I've heard other people say that the complete opposite is true. Victoria, you've done both. What do you think?
It's acting. It's not different. It's a different environment. I've done performance capture a lot, which is a full performance. But, you know, if you're going to bring truth to any character for anybody that's playing it to be believable, our job as actors are to make imaginary circumstances be truthful. And I actually don't like being called a voice actor. I don't like that because I don't say, oh, I'm only gonna act with my voice on this. That doesn't happen. You know, it's a full body experience whether I have the facial capture on or I just have a microphone. I can't separate my body. And I think that's what we are as actors. We're skilled instruments and we use our emotions to tell stories. And I do the same when I'm on a TV show as I do on a performance capture stage, as I do in a voiceover booth. And I try to bring all my experiences as a human on this planet to each and every character, whether I'm just doing, you know, I say just, but Fortnite Save the World is not as narrative-based as what Assassin's Creed was, but I like to hope that I bring some truth to each one.
I will say, I don't know how many anime fans there are in the audience, but I will say, to me, I've always said that anime dubbing, or dubbing of any kind, really, is like the Latin of voiceover to me. It's kind of like, I feel like it's the hardest because it requires you to use both sides of your brain. You've got to use like the logical, you know, puzzling math problem solving with the creative. And I feel like once you do dubbing, you can do anything. Everything else feels easy.
Definitely. I have done some animes as well, and it was a training ground, you know, because you're right, there's a very set equation and looping and finding out how to be emotional, but you're mirroring somebody else. It's almost like doing a cover version of someone's favorite song, and finding yourself in that process is very interesting.
Yeah, it's difficult when you have to bring, if you're redoing something or there's already an established character that you have to redo. I find that to be, recently I've been working on a new project, but I've been just doing the performance capture and somebody else is already established as the character. So it was really interesting to see whether I could find enjoyment and find bring myself to that character when it's already established, you know? So that's where it becomes, is it as creative? I don't know. It's a fine line.
Now, I have some more questions I want to ask you guys, but before I do, we have a microphone set up here in the center, so if anybody would like to line up, we'll take your questions up. And while people are lining up, I'm going to ask you a few more.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to their questions.
Mela, you are in Avengers Assemble, the cartoon, recently, as
Yes.
Princess Xanda, a major character from Black Panther. And Elizabeth, I was telling you earlier that I admire that you were actually Thor, the mighty Thor, Jane Foster as Thor, in Lego Avengers. What's it like being part of the Marvel juggernaut?
Cool.
It's really cool. Marvel Avengers Assemble, the Black Panther's Quest, the final season was one of the final things that Stan Lee worked on, and he definitely was a forerunner of diversity, not just in casting but in writing and reimagining heroes from every shade and every nation, and I applaud him for creating an alternate universe where we could see our higher selves. And it's been an extraordinary experience to be with so many talented actors, but also to see what that's meant to our fans and my family. I mean, being part of the Black Panther. Oh, sorry. It's meant a lot to my family to be able to grow up and see heroes that look like us. And I know other people across the world have felt that way as well.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, sir.
Hi there. Just a quick question. I was just curious, what has or was I guess your biggest obstacle when it comes to voice acting personally, and how did you overcome it?
I would say that this applies to really acting overall, and not necessarily to voice acting specifically, but to be an actor, you have to be really open to being sensitive and feeling your emotions and feeling empathy for other people. But at the same time, you have to develop a really thick skin because you are constantly rejected. You are constantly told no, and not necessarily in a mean way, but it's like I might audition for 100 projects and book one, and that's a lot of time and a lot of yourself and your feelings that you put into these auditions, and then you're, no, 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 no. So finding the balance between staying open and emotive for the art side while developing a thicker skin for the business side, it took me a lot of years to really, I'm still, constantly walking that balance. And, thankfully I have a great support group and I have a lot of friends and, colleagues that help keep me buoyed. I'm not sure. I don't remember how to pronounce that word. But yeah, that for me has been one of the biggest obstacles.
Yeah, I think exactly what Elizabeth said. It's really hard to be a sensitive creature and be rejected all the time. I think last year I clocked up 135 auditions and booked 6. So it's and I feel like maybe I'm doing well in that world. If you're just starting out, it's even harder. So yeah, it's tricky, and I think there's some part of you that's you need to stay that way, because if you don't, then you become too hardened, and yeah, you need to have that vulnerability to take on humans in a truthful way, and portray the people that you want to see on screen naturally. But it's a fine line to make sure you stay afloat.
And along with that, I was just say that's actually when people ask me like, oh, I want to be a voice actor, like, do you have any tips? One of my top ones is surround yourself with people who say, yes, you can, and who support you, because you will find no scarcity of people who will tell you, no, you can't, you're not good enough, you're being silly. So
Which
surrounding
applies
yourself,
to any dream you have.
I think so, definitely. And for voice actors, when they're asking me advice, a lot of people will come up at first and say, I can do all these other voices, and they're imitating someone else. But especially in the gaming world and the extreme narratives that we have, what you have to bring to the roles is your voice, the things that you're passionate about. And like Xanda, her superpower was shape-shifting. So she became a villain, but she had all of this power. Trying to be someone else made her a villain. And I would say to not just voice actors and actors, but scientists, mathematicians, cosmetologists, whatever it is, you are beautifully, wonderfully drawn exactly how you are. And your life will flourish when you embrace that individuality and beauty that's in yourself.
Thank you very much.
Great question.
Go ahead.
Hello, everybody.
hi,
you can lower
tilt
the mic
down if you want.
Just tip
Just
it.
turn it. Tilt
Tilt
it.
it. Tilt it.
Yeah.
Tilt it down.
There you go.
This is so helpful. Thank you.
Some mic technique for you.
Yeah. So, I was wondering when you're all going through the audition process and you're reading for a character for the first time, how do you find the character's voice inside of yourself and bring it out?
Ooh, that's a really good question.
It is.
I'll go first. I think I used to spend a lot of time with voicing characters, thinking about it. Now I try and go on instinct. I try and look at the character and just spend a little minute just digesting, okay, what they look like, and it's a strange process for me. It's almost like an osmosis, and I've had this since I was a young child, like imitating people that are around me. So I kind of, as long as I have a nice image, and if not, we don't have an image, we have a description. And I always come from, well, where does this lie in me? What part of this is me? If this character is stubborn, or if this character is funny or motherly, or where does this, when am I like that? And then how does that affect my voice? Because we're all affected by our circumstances, where we grew up, where we traveled to as a kid, who brought us up. Was it our mother or father? Was it both? Was it an aunt or uncle? Who influenced us? So I try and go from there and go, well, how is this character like me? And then from there I do it. But I try not to think, we have so many auditions as well. I try not to spend too much time getting in my head about it and just let the voice flow. That's my process.
And I think as you start out as a voice actor and you do it more and more, you kind of learn more about the range of your voice. And most voice actors that I know tend to have kind of like a small stable of like archetypal characters or voices that they can do or they're do well or are well known for. So when I look at a script, I'm usually sent the character because it matches kind of one of those archetypal voices that the casting director or the director knows that I can do. And then how I differentiate between them is looking at characteristics, but also not so much always necessarily in the voice, but in the delivery. You know, taking the characteristics and how does that affect how they talk, their worldview, how does that shape how, you know, the sounds and so forth that come out of them, the tempo that they speak, etc.
I started out very logical, but a little bit more like Victoria now, where there's a kind of an instinct. I mean, you don't see 5 and 6-year-olds playing and being like, I wonder what I would sound like if I was a police officer or a villain. They just kind of do it. And there is this kind of childlike sense when you see a description or even a drawing and like your first instinct. And I think when you first start in an industry, you're like, what do they want? What do they want? And then as you start to work more, you're like, what does this inspire me to do? And it becomes more like playing. And it's a split second. And I'm not sure why we think it, but we'll see it. And that's the beauty of it. When you're doing those auditions, there's 20 people's imaginations, and one will resonate with the creators. But they're all pretty extraordinary. And I've booked a few jobs where I was just myself or something was inspiring, and then later they call back and go, that character that Elizabeth did, or let's call her for that. And so just being yourself and following that child instinct can be really powerful in the
Being
future.
yourself. I think one of my favorite things was DreamWorks called up and said, oh, we need a sarcastic Brit. Can Victoria read for this? I was like, oh, okay, so.
Dig deep.
It's nice that DreamWorks think that about me.
It's a great question. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Great question.
Go ahead.
Hi, my question is a little bit more. Hi, sorry, fangirl. But in regard to like the cosplaying and female characters that you guys voice, is there any in particular that that always kind of leave you in shock that that you don't think people would recognize or would come put together like an actual cosplay?
The characters that we voice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some beautiful Evie Fry cosplays because of the Victorian era that she is in. The what is that? What's that theme called? Steampunk. Oh man, they look so good with the pocket watches and the stitching, and I love it. I love that people spend so much time doing that. So yeah, they always astound me, and I love it when they're little as well, and they come as a little assassin. I just love that, and that's probably not what I should be advocating.
I mean, I'm always just pretty tickled whenever I see anybody cosplaying a character that I've done. Not that I can take like all the credit for the character. There are hundreds of other artists who are responsible for them as well. But I mean, it always is kind of, like I remember when I was younger, I used to go to conventions just as a fan before I started doing voice acting. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'll know I've really made it when somebody is cosplaying a character that I've done. And so it's like the first time I saw that, like I think I started to cry, actually. But one of my favorite things that I've seen, I'm in an anime called Noragami, and I play a character named Bishamon. And I've seen lots of Bishamon cosplay, but a couple of years ago I saw my first blighted Bishamon. They get blighted by these kind of demonish parasites, and I thought that was pretty cool, like spin on the cosplay I'd never seen before.
I love seeing cosplay from Vampire Night, Fate Stay Night, Miraculous. I've never seen a Tiki cosplay. Everyone is like, they're I don't know if anybody knows, this is a beautiful Marinette cosplayer from Miraculous Ladybug with Tiki, who I play. And Tiki's really adorable, and she just thinks everybody can do it. You can do it, Marinette, just tell the truth. And so everyone always goes, hey, and they show this little Tiki as a plushie, but I've never seen a cosplay
I've
Tiki.
seen like one like full version. I think it was like Mexico.
I think it's because she's so tiny. I mean, but I'm looking for it. I'll look for it.
I'm going to do it for your birthday.
Yes, you are July 31st.
You don't have
You
long
heard
to
it
get
here.
that together.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get our next question, I want to actually ask you about Miraculous, and you also do another children's show. Is it Miraculous has fans of all ages? I have a friend who cosplays. That's a lot of the characters. Is it different for these all ages ones than say something like Lifeline or Assassin's Creed, certainly, where there's more aimed at a mature audience? Do you treat it differently as an actor?
We don't treat it differently as an actor. I think you bring in the booth whatever it inspires you to, and it's a director's medium, so they're guiding you. But our first Comic-Con, Miraculous Ladybug had just come out, and one of our leads, his grandparent had passed away. And so he couldn't make it. And I remember Keith Silverstein and I, who we thought at the time we were side characters. Why are we even here? I guess it's because they couldn't get Bryce. And there were like 1,500 people screaming from 4 to 27. And it was super positive. And I had just I love all my roles, but it was like a season of vampires and Holy Grail wars. And then you have Miraculous Ladybug and the overwhelming positivity and kindness, gender fluid kids who would, swap cosplay. It's just really brought out an acceptance. There's a theme that everyone has something miraculous inside of them. And it was each fandom has a kind of a personality to it. And for Miraculous Ladybug, the personality was overwhelming, inclusive kindness. And I love all of the fandoms, but yes, the Miraculous Ladybug fandom is pretty extraordinary.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm a voice actor based in New York City and Atlanta. I had a question about the intersection between entertainment and politics that's going on sort of nowadays, and that there's a real push for authenticity as far as actors who are portraying characters of the same ethnic background, and this is going for theater, for movies, et cetera, but it seems that voiceover can potentially be different. I see a lot of Caucasian actors playing non-Caucasian characters, and then vice versa, because you don't necessarily see the actor's face in voice, so there's almost a permission, it seems, that there's a little more malleability. So I wanted to hear what you guys think about that. Recently, I was given a breakdown for a character that was not of my background, and I had a little bit of an internal conflict going on whether or not I should audition for this. I was curious what you thought.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's something that I think all of us have dealt with, and I still think it's a topic of discussion. I play Maylin is Native American in Horizon Zero Dawn, and I didn't know what the character looked like, how the character was going to appear in the game at all. So I felt like, well, I can't really take responsibility for what I'm just doing my performance, and what it turns out to be is I was actually hugely shocked that would be portrayed in that way. But in a way, I thought, well, I don't know. I feel like it's a topic where you don't know really how to feel. I mean, the opportunities are there, which is great. I love that TV and film are heading towards ethnicities playing their own ethnicities. I don't know how it will carry on with voiceover, whether that will continue or whether there'll become a shift in that. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's still very much a dialogue that's happening. I don't think that anybody quite has the answers yet. I mean, I am definitely personally seeing a drive towards inclusivity of underrepresented ethnicities in the VA voice actor world. But I've also been told that ultimately, like, they very much want to give more opportunities, but ultimately they're going to cast the best actor for the role.
Which is good, because you don't want to stop creativity. That's another thing where if we all just do what we were boxed to do, it's going to become a very, I think, potentially flat industry of everybody. Okay, I can only play a white Brit. That's it. That would. I think it would stunt my growth as an artist, and I've been very lucky on camera to play transgendered characters and gay characters, American, Nordic, all these different things. And I love that I can have that range as an actor, but I also am very supportive of everybody having their say and it being equal. So I don't know, it's a very interesting, prevalent dialogue right now.
Well, and I agree that it's a malleable conversation with voiceover because it is a voice. And I appreciate the diversity in the creation and the design of the characters, but the voicing, if you're Asian American or Lebanese American or Nigerian American, you could actually sound exactly like every other American. There's been this sort of insinuation that you wouldn't have English as your first language when it's your first language. So I think in voiceover we have an opportunity to address our impressions on stereotypes that may be false. So I think the issue for voiceover is to have diversity not only in design but in opportunity. But as Victoria said, we get to honor the fact that we are artists and technicians, and ultimately, especially in gaming, there is a technique to it. And then also, it's just like every other industry. We can't have like a racial registry. They're not allowed to ask you exactly what you are. So I think there's an attempt to diversity, but there's a fine line between deciding if we're enough of something. You have someone of Mexican descent, West Indies, Lebanese, and sarcastic Brit here. So, what does it really look like? And I think we're finding a voice for people, literally, and representing this alternate reality where we can have a more, I don't want to say homogenized, but it's an interesting discussion. I don't have the answer. It's a wonderful question. And as an actor, you do have to just, check in your heart if you feel like you can portray it and give it an honesty.
I will say one thing I have noticed that I think is pretty interesting is that I am in casting seeing a trend towards there are often times where they will ask for authentic accents only.
Yes.
And so.
And I think that's definitely nobody.
And that's
would
on
want.
camera too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that I would play a trans character now. I did it in 2010, but that's not going to happen again. They want authentic, real trans people.
But it had a value too in giving a portrayal.
At the time,
and
I was
opening the
able
doors
to.
that.
Yeah, at the time, I was able to shine a light on it, but now that wouldn't be the case.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question, I'm afraid.
Hello, hope you guys are doing well today. I had a question. Just
Could you
kind of
hold the
like
mic closer? We can't hear you.
Sorry. I had a question about, I know you guys are very, pour your lives into these characters, and you just try to bring them to life as deep as possible, and I want to thank you first before I ask the question for that. And, have you guys ever tried to, seen, fan art or any kind of, community creation where you were not able to see the artist and you wanted to thank them, or they wanted to try and come to thank you guys at all?
I love, on a Friday, I always have Fan Art Friday, spelled like Evie Fry. So I always do that, and you can, my social media, I would love to meet the artist, but I try and celebrate them by tagging them, and normally somebody will come back to me and say, thank you so much, really nice. So each Friday I have Fan Art Friday, so I like to celebrate the photos and pictures and cosplays that are of my characters. I mainly celebrate the Fortnite and Assassin's Creed, but if there's other stuff, I love to celebrate that too, and I'm so grateful. We wouldn't have the support, we wouldn't be able to come to do these things without the followers of our characters, and it's such an honor when somebody cosplays. But as Elizabeth said, it's not just us, there's so many people in creating all these characters that we're thankfully, we look like the front people for it, but there's a billion people behind us.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly one of my favorite things about getting to go to conventions across the country and around the world, really, is that it gives me the opportunity to have that face-to-face time with people who are fans. And a lot of people are generous enough and gracious enough to bring their fan art, either to have it signed and just share it with me, or sometimes I get copies, which is extra cool.
Yeah, the gifts are really nice.
Right.
If
I love
you
the
get
fan
a
art.
copy of the artwork.
Are you an artist?
I tried to at one point. It's just that I kind of fell off of it because I actually am an aspiring voice actor. I want to be a minor in theater.
Okay, well, you can find us all on Instagram. We'd love to support your art as a voiceover artist and as an illustrator.
And you can start with an affirmation that you are a voice actor.
Yes.
you don't want to be one.
And on the note of fan art, if anyone has anything that you would like to get signed, Mela, Victoria, and Elizabeth are going to be around the corner in just a few minutes, be able to do a little bit of a meet and greet, correct?
Right, and I think there's some free prints as well.
Yeah, we
So,
have some free prints of
yeah.
some of our characters if you don't have anything signed, but we're happy to sign programs or just come say hi. And thank you for all turning out on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, I applaud you for being up this early on the last day of South by Southwest.
And I'd like to thank our moderator.
Yeah, big hand for the moderator today, Kevin.
Before we go, one last question. Where do you think voice acting is going from here? Is there anything big and exciting? You know, you've done motion capture a lot more. What's going to happen next?
I think narrative and what moving pictures was in the 20th century, I think gaming is now a whole dimensional storytelling form. I think we're going to see an elevation of narration through the gaming industry and how we tell stories and what they look like and how we interact with them. It's a new campfire.
The scripts are just getting, the narrative scripts are getting better and better and better. They are having, the auditions that I go to now for performance capture stuff is like the top casting directors that are casting. I went in to see a casting director that did Green Mile and Titanic for a performance capture role. Like, they are stepping up their game, and they have money for it too. So they are getting the top writers in film and casting directors and film directors to do these games, and it's taking it to a new level, investing in that way, and it's a really exciting thing to be part of. I also think virtual reality is going to become a huge thing, and games like Detroit Become Human. I think there's going to be more games of that nature, which I'm super excited about as an actor. I think those are really exciting.
And I also, I mean, I feel personally like the stories and the concepts and worlds that are being created for video games are oftentimes, to me, more innovative and more exciting than most of the stuff I see coming out in film. I feel like video games have the ability to be riskier with their subject matter, whereas, like, you know, large budget, films and film companies feel more of a pressure to appeal to a broader audience and don't always push their boundaries as much. I mean, I can tell you, like, I feel like I'm more excited about Death Stranding than I have been for any movie that's come out in, like, the last 5 years that I can think of. And I'm just excited to see where they continue to go with that.
Yeah, and I think it's because where film, for a moment, was trying to meet a financial model, the gaming industry intrinsically is attached to its fans, and they're listening. Being at Respawn, I got to tour the headquarters, but they have a whole team, and they're reading millions of comments and taking that into account as they're developing more content. So I think part of the gaming industry being so rich in narrative, in diversity and reflection of the gaming community worldwide is because they're connected. And so I think you're going to continue seeing things that really ignite you and ignite conversation and inspire you because it is a reflection of what you've asked for and reacted to.
And with that, thank you all very, very much for coming by.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.